We turn now to the UK lockdown and its effects on the Isle of Man. I call on Mr Callister to ask his urgent question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I ask the Chief Minister if he'll make a statement on the impact of Manx residents on the latest lockdown announced in the United Kingdom?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I have sent a copy of this for reference to any honourable member wanting to discuss this with their constituent. Equally, I will send a link, which I forgot to do, that the UK have published, Mr Speaker, on their new national restrictions from the 5th of November. Everyone can find it at gov.uk/guidance/new national restrictions from the 5th of November, which gives a very clear detail of what the UK plan to do. But as I say, I've already sent a copy of this to honourable members. So as honourable members, Mr Speaker, will be aware, the UK Prime Minister announced at a press conference on the 31st of October that England would go into a lockdown starting from Thursday this week and lasting until at least the 2nd of December. The Prime Minister made a further statement to the Westminster Parliament yesterday, Monday. The other nations of the United Kingdom have their own measures in place. Now, the package of measures for England outlined by the Prime Minister is subject to a vote in the UK Parliament tomorrow. Many of the details are gradually emerging, and I can reassure honourable members that we remain in close touch with the United Kingdom Government at a political and official level and through public health channels. Mr Speaker, there are three aspects that I would like to highlight at this stage. Firstly, travel. The UK's latest guidance makes clear that people cannot travel overseas or even within the United Kingdom unless for work, education or other limited, legally permitted reasons. While the Isle of Man is of course not a part of the United Kingdom, our people have an obligation to respect UK laws while they are there. Unless people have a compelling, pressing and, importantly, legal reason to travel within the United Kingdom or beyond, then I would urge them not to do so. Residents who need to travel through the United Kingdom to return home will, of course, be able to do so. This leads me into the second aspect, our students. Universities in England currently remain open. The new guidance in England does allow students to return for the Christmas break. It does, however, say that they must not move back and forward between their permanent home and student home during term time. Now, I know that a number of our students have already decided to return home before the end of the term and continue their courses remotely until after the current lockdown. This is a decision for students and their families to make, but as things stand, this would seem the best way for students to return, self-isolate for the 14 days required, and still be able to enjoy Christmas with their families and friends. Thirdly, I know there are concerns about the impact that this might have on supplies of goods to the island. It is important to say that there is no reason to think that the supply of essential goods, food and medicines will be disrupted as a result of this latest lockdown in England. What is less certain is the possible impact on non-essential businesses, especially those whose parent company may be based in England. We know from the last United Kingdom lockdown that some experienced challenges in terms of stock. Others may be instructed to close. At the end of the day, these are commercial decisions, Mr Speaker, but where government can help, advise or support, we will do. The Department of Enterprise has been in touch with some of these businesses and will continue to do so as the situation develops. Mr Speaker, this is a fast-moving and fluid situation. We will be offering a full briefing to all honourable members on Monday of next week to update them on developments as they arrive. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Chief Minister for a statement this morning. But can I ask him how a second lockdown in England will affect patient transfers, especially in the northwest, who we already know are suffering at the moment with a high number of intakes into hospitals. So the focus really around patient transfer, how that will affect people who have appointments on Friday and possibly going into early next week if possible.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this moment in time, I'm led to believe that is not impacted. There are a number of exemptions, which I think all honourable members will find at the link I've mentioned. I will send you an email giving you that link, where it gives clear legal reasons that people can move, and the care of your health, going to work where you can't work from home, etc., are all covered there, but the patient transfers will continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Mr. Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How many people have completed documentation that will allow them to return to the island in the next 7 days? And has the Cabinet Office the resources to monitor the people if the need arises?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. We don't know how many residents are off island currently, as we don't track those leaving, and landing forms are required to be completed within 48 hours prior to travel, so we don't have those numbers. It would take an inordinate amount of staff and resources to track every member of the Isle of Man, so they obviously have the right to go off the island. People will have a number. That doesn't mean say they've left the island, and it's only when they're coming back they have 48 hours to fill out a form. That's when we find out. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wondering if the Chief Minister could confirm with regards to the steam packet, because clearly when the boat arrives in UK waters, there's obviously going to be under the UK rules. What advice is the Chief Minister? I've just looked on the steam packet website now, and the only thing, you know, there's nothing really been updated with regards to what's coming up later in the week for the UK. And with regards to the wearing of masks, I'm aware that it is a requirement, but there's many reports of it not being adhered to. I just wonder what the Chief Minister is going to do with regards to that. And if I could also ask a question which has been a concern of many constituents, will the Council of Ministers consider non-essential travel in the near future?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I expect the Isle of Man steam packet to follow the rules when they're in UK territory waters. That said, we have been assured, because we've already been through this, Mr. Speaker, that people travelling through the United Kingdom to get back to the island will be allowed. So therefore the steam packet will be able to operate as normal. Obviously the Council of Ministers, we're meeting on Thursday. We've already got papers on a number of issues, and we consider all topics based on the evidence given from our Gold Committee, made up of medics, etc., when we make our decisions. And as I say, we're all having a talk on Monday to discuss the latest updates on this in the Burial Suite, where we'll be able to give, hopefully, honourable members far more information.
Supplementary question, Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know the Chief Minister is aware a number of our public services rely on people who live in the UK or further afield in order for them to continue to function. So the courts, for example, or the planning system. During the last lockdown, we saw that whilst people were legally able to travel for work, there were a number of UK-based staff who, for a variety of reasons themselves, felt unable to do so. Is the Chief Minister anticipating this to happen again? And if so, what contingency planning is in place to ensure that our public services can continue to operate?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for Ramsey for his question. At this moment in time, as is in the document I've referenced a number of times, and I will send all honourable members a link, you are legally allowed to leave the United Kingdom to go to work. So you cannot go on holiday. If you're in the United Kingdom, you cannot go on holiday to, say, Spain or anywhere. But if you're going to look after a vulnerable family member in those jurisdictions, you can, and you can travel for work if you cannot do that work at home. So therefore, anyone that we would need on the Isle of Man to help us with either courts or helping in the hospital, if they're a consultant, that would be allowed to continue. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Isle of Man is home to a number of key workers that happen for the oil industry, for one example. Can the Chief Minister give an update on how the Isle of Man will deal with those individuals, and will the 7-day testing on their return still remain in place, or will that rule change and they'll have to lock down for 14 days on their return back from such an important work within the UK?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Council of Ministers did discuss this very topic only the other week, where we made an announcement that if you're a key worker living on the Isle of Man, then you would be able to go away to work, come back and isolate for the 7 days, but then have a test, because A, there is a small number, and B, they would be continuing in lockdown. We've also offered this option to people who are going away to hospital for, say, cancer treatment, and then coming back if they have to do 2 turnarounds in a month period. Then it seemed fair that we couldn't have members of the public in constant lockdown. So people on the Isle of Man legally will not be stopped by the United Kingdom government going to the United Kingdom or further afield to work if they cannot do that job from home. So if they can show that they're needed to be physically somewhere else, then they will be able to travel. I hope I've made that as clear as possible. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Returning to my original question, but with slightly more detail, which will hopefully be helpful. How many people have contacted the Travel Notification Service team about travel, but not actually completed the final bit and got the R number? Out of those people, is the documentation open-ended? And do we have an awareness of how many people are actually off island who could potentially return within 2 days? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My answer is no, we don't have that information, because you could decide, giving yourself as an example, Mr Morehouse, that you want to go away at some stage in the future on business. You apply for your number for leave to go, and then it gets put back a week. It doesn't. Once you've got that number, you use that number again. So we do not know the physical numbers of residents off the island. It would take a massive amount of resources. But obviously we have the team there that should you come back, you fill in the form 48 hours before, we can then do the checks. But we do not have the information that the Honourable Member is looking for.
Supplementary question, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm just really going to push the Chief Minister for an answer on my previous question with regards to masks and the steam packet. And the response that I got was that you would hope the steam packet are following the processes. Is it not a responsibility of this government to ensure that the steam packet and anybody who's operating services to the island to protect our people, that we are checking what they are doing? Could the Chief Minister commit to making sure he checks what the process is on the UK side before anybody travels to the Isle of Man? Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm more than happy to look into the rules and regulations on travel for the steam packet and ask for them to be circulated to honourable members. But it's not for government, it's not for me to go around every individual business on the Isle of Man or operating on the Isle of Man to say you must wear masks if you're, the planes, etc. That you must. I expect them to follow the rules. But obviously, I will find out through our other colleagues in DOI or Treasury what the rules are for the Isle of Man steam packet on wearing masks, and ensure. I'm sure they are doing. They are following the rules and regulations, but I will circulate what is expected of them. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Do we have the number of travel notification documents that are open, and are they open-ended? Is there any date at which they simply are no use? I have received a message this morning from an individual who's gone across, she's completed the documentation, and she wonders if it's open-ended. It doesn't appear to be the case on the document that there is a final date when it has got to be used, and they've got to apply for the return date. Thank you.
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm happy to seek advice on that. My belief is that it is open-ended once you've got the right, but there may be a time limit that I'm not aware of. It's details I don't have, but I'm more than happy to circulate all honourable members with confirmation of that.
Final supplementary, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I just really want to push again on this question. The Chief Minister focused on the steam packet, and it sounded like their employees, which are very important to us. They bring many of our supplies to the island. But my focus is with regards to our islanders who are returning on that vessel to the island, and the advice that we are giving to them. Perhaps it can be done through their certificate to travel, but with regards to the masks, it's about everybody, because the UK say you have to wear them, and it's making sure that there is adequate notification to the individuals who are going to travel to protect the whole of the island. The biggest risk to the island is people travelling into it. So can the Chief Minister confirm that he will look at this for the individuals, not just the steam packet company?
Chief Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought I had, but I'm more than happy to state, yes, I will ask to make sure that people returning follow the rules on wearing masks. I believe it's done on our planes. I thought it was being done on the boat. If the Honourable Member has examples where it's not, I'm more than happy to look at it. But yes, I will.